oh, our seller's not offering any compensation, so I'm sorry, you're gonna have to figure that out.
Be mad, go ahead and punch the air, right? Squeeze your anger ball. And then after you realize those are focused around a faulty premise. Everything that they are based on is faulty. And what is faulty about it is that
they left there feeling so empowered because the lender gave them homework.
Ask yourself, why am I talking right now, right? Am I just filling the air because I'm nervous? Am I mirroring, matching their energy?
Hi everyone, it is episode 250. Today we have a guest. It's been a minute since we had a guest. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Harrison Beecher and then he can fill in the blanks for us. Harrison is a native Washingtonian. Alissa loves to know where people are from, is the managing partner of the Coalition Properties Group, a top producing real estate team serving the DC metro area. A 30 under 30 class of 2016, Harrison will serve as the 2024 co-chair for NAR's Meetings and Conference Committee and continues to serve on the National Board of Directors for NAR as well as the Culture and Transformation Commission.
Which is really why, a big reason we wanted to have you here. You know, April was just Fair Housing Month and we wanted to definitely touch on that topic. And that's where you serve. You serve so much in that area, which is why we wanted to have you here.
Why don't you tell us also what Harrison...
Also, you want to know a fun fact?
Wait, this is so great.
I saved this for while we were recording. Okay. I, too, was in your 30-30 class of 2016.
I remember, Alissa, I got the book. My cover is right behind my desk. I remember.
He's like, I have your photo right here.
For real?
Well, our names are not, you're not on the same page as me, but you're in the magazine that is up on the wall.
Isn't that funny? We were in the same class and here we are reunited all these years later.
8 years later.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Mississippi, right?
Louisiana.
Oh, see, I was close. I knew it was.
Close, so close. That's next door. But yeah, so funny.
I love that y'all are both 30.
I kept being like, he looks so familiar. And maybe I've heard him speak somewhere. And then when we were reading your bio, I was like, oh, we were in the same class in 2016.
Y'all graduated together.
8 years ago? Is that crazy?
Back when we were under 30.
All right.
Oh, right.
Letting go of a lot of
no longer
stuff now. My team member is a 2024. My direct prodigy and the guy that worked with me earned it just last week for 2024. So that makes me feel proud, but old AF.
Yes.
Yeah, but that means you're teaching well because you're imparting the wisdom you have and it's working on the youths. It's working for the youth.
For sure.
I love it. Okay, Harrison, I want to quickly cover before we dive into it what you speak on because I know that we actually had a listener refer us to you who had heard you speak somewhere. So here are some of the things that Harrison is a national speaker on. Networking and referral business growth, social media optimization, mindset, young professional development, wealth building, diversity, equity, and inclusion, public speaking, instructor development, the power of partnership, referral business growth, partying with a purpose.
We liked that one.
Client events, and community-focused real estate business growth. And you have a podcast called All Blends Perfectly.
Yeah.
Did I catch it all? You talk on a lot of topics, friend. Do you want to get more clients and referrals from using social media without spending hours and hours creating content?
Here's our secret, Modern Agent Social Club. Mask is the marketing membership that pairs current content trends with timeless strategies to help you grow your real estate business from the comfort of your couch.
When you join Mask, you'll have instant access to relatable and approachable content every single month because your brand needs you in it.
You'll also get a weekly private podcast giving you the creative strategies you need to stay relevant,
marketing campaigns to grow your email list,
and weekly email templates to keep you top of mind with your database, and so much more.
In just 30 minutes a week, you can go from barely showing up on social media to showing up in a way that attracts and connects you with your perfect fit followers.
Doors to Modern Agent Social Club are open right now for a limited time. Head on over to hustlehumblypodcast.com/mask and use the code hustlehumbly to get your first month free. Hustlehumblypodcast.com/MASC. Mask.
Only other topic that I didn't throw in here because it was a few years ago. In 2022, NAR created a National Fair Housing Champion Award, and I was one of the inaugural winners of that award. And the cool part was it then encouraged or allowed NAR to make a direct contribution to one of the nonprofits that we support here in DC. So that was something I was very passionate about and honored to be included in that class.
That's so cool.
Very fantastic.
Will you tell us a little about that nonprofit? Let's just talk about that first.
For sure. So each year, my team actually identifies and chooses to work with a different local nonprofit that's generally focused in a couple different buckets. One is on housing insecurity or unhoused people, education, youth, or food insecurity. And for the 2022 year, I was president of our local association that year. And our local association, GCAR, had a charitable partnership with an organization that helped with financial literacy and education. And through GCAR, I made the money go through GCAR to support our nonprofit partner that year. And we did 4 or 5 financial literacy seminars with those resources, and we're able to educate. It was, I want to say, like 50 to 60 young adults in the region is who that money actually came. So it went through the GCAR Cares Foundation to support our nonprofit partner for the year.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
I think that kind of leads us into our first question, which is, how did you even become an advocate speaker specifically addressing fair housing and where did your passion for this area come from?
Yeah, well, I am, I guess, fortunate to be a minority in a lot of the spaces where I work from being a young Black man. My team members and my partners, are also other young Black men. So it has given us an insight and a lived experience that's a little bit closer to a lot of people that have struggled with a lot of different both economic and housing related issues. It's just parts of our family life and things we've grown up and known. So for us, as we were able to figure out a successful and thriving business, there was always the question of how do we bring this knowledge back to specifically our community of Black and brown folks in the DC metro area and beyond, and hopefully show by example and bring the tools that we've learned through success and just being in the real estate game to folks that maybe didn't think that they could do it, that maybe didn't have anybody close to them bringing that information to them. So it kind of started with relationship and who we're close to and who we know. And it really is interesting how it has grown to an empowering and a motivational posture that's gotten other people, even other realtors in our area, to do comparable and similar things. So, I think it's the core lesson of like, when you are given a blessing, it is your job to pay it forward. That's what it all comes from. And we started with the communities and people we were closest to.
So what year did you become a licensed agent?
I actually got into real estate right out of college in 2008. So I graduated.
Me too. Well, not 2008, but right out of college, I got my license and just started. I was like 22 when I started. So that's how we got to be 30 under 30, because we had some years of experience under our belt by the time we were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people don't start until they're after 30.
Yeah.
So as a newly licensed agent in 2008, at what point did you become passionate about fair housing? I feel like it took me a few years, I think,
to know what that
to really understand.
But he's coming from a lived experience. I guess, Harrison, my question is: were you a homeowner when you became a realtor, or did you buy after that?
No. I mean, I was 22. I was a broke college kid. I was a realtor, but I was also a bartender, bouncer, DJ, and working at night to like pay my bills during the day. So we're
like the same person.
Hustling and figuring it out. I feel like we talked about this a little bit at the South Carolina or the Charleston retreat. I feel like that year we probably talked about some of our overlapping things. But no, for me, it was at Georgetown University, where I went to college. I was a studio art major and theology minor. And my minor in theology was really focused around social justice and the work that, through that lens, the church was doing in the world to help all the people that needed it. So giving back and having a very clear understanding of the need in all the communities I was close to in DC was a part of what I had done from high school and college. Went to Catholic high school, led student ministry, and did a bunch of things like out in the world. It was always next to everything I was doing is that you carve out time to give back. So when I
Mhm.
looked at my business that I was trying to grow and building a referral business, I saw this interesting delta of people that needed help, but also people that wanted community and wanted connection. So one of my main, that party with the purpose line you talked about, was one of my main business drivers, was throwing really cool events from my nightlife contacts, but always partnering with some type of nonprofit organization that some of my friends, because my friends at Georgetown were kind of save the world hippies working in every kind of organization. It was like friends doing it. I was like, hey, where do you work or what are you doing? Come do this with me, because I know people have the desire and hunger to give back in some way, but they don't know how to connect the dots between their desire and organizations that need it. And I'm going to kill all these birds with one stone. You'll come and learn about some real estate. You're going to give me some referrals. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to go and we're going to give back. Cool. Everybody come do it. And that model really worked, and we've been able to scale it significantly with my current sales team.
That's awesome.
It makes sense that that would be something to get people to buy into easily, because you're appealing to all these different interests at the same time, and you're putting it all under the umbrella of let's have a really fun party. And so we'll all just go to the really fun party, and they're like, yeah, sign me up. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's get into the meat of fair housing, because we want to hear your expert thoughts and opinions and how you teach others to do this out in the world. What are some ways that agents are commonly violating fair housing laws? Like, what are the mistakes you see most often?
There's a big problem a lot of people have with getting frustrated and judging others by their actions. And then we get mad when they don't judge us by our intention. So one of the biggest and most important things I think salespeople need to do is slow down a little bit first and realize that just because I have good intention, if I'm not being thoughtful of with whom I'm communicating and how I'm communicating with them, I can do harm unintentionally. So I think if we can humble ourselves a bit and realize that there are people with different lived experiences that bring a lot of different things to not just real estate interaction, but with understanding money and understanding like the rules of money and how it works. At one of our events that we did in DC a couple of years ago, we put on this ownership conference where we brought in a professor to talk about the trauma that some communities of color have associated with money, right? Like if you're not aware that some folks have a lot of deep-seated both fear, trauma, and other emotional things connected to their finances, then that's going to change how you interact with them. So step one is quite frankly to slow down a little bit. Step two is to own and understand your own bias that you may have. And step three is to really work to meet people where they're at, even if it means slowing down and adjusting your normal processes to try to make space to accommodate someone that may be bringing a lot of different baggage or a lot of different things in their life and experience to specifically home buying. So again, for us, we had a strategic advantage from growing up in communities of color and kind of seeing and acknowledging the stuff that we've seen our family kind of work through. And when I train and go around the country, it's more about helping salespeople realize that what makes us good is our gut and our intuition and the vibe and kind of how we feel confident about flowing. In situations where you're interacting with different people than who you normally interact with, you need to slow down a little bit and kind of give that person you're interacting with a little bit more agency and trust and space to tell you maybe some of the things that they're thinking. And also don't interpret immediately somebody being cagey, being quiet, being fearful, being reluctant to take action as them not wanting to work with you, not believing you, not whatever. You just got to take a little bit more stock of kind of what they're coming from and where they are and build hopefully space that conversation can happen. But that takes a little bit more effort. That takes a little bit more humility. That takes a little bit more thought and intention. But I think when we choose to do that, the relationships it can open us up to, the business opportunities it can open us up to can make a really big difference, because I think the communities that need the most support are the folks that are newer to home buying, newer to finances, newer to wealth building. And that's a lot of the information that we just have plugged into our heads from the experience that we've got. So, if a small percentage of real estate professionals can choose to carve out more of their, business attention to communities that need it most, I think that can make a really big difference in some of the disparities that exist just kind of in society right now.
I agree. We just did an episode on the stories we tell ourselves, because in real estate, we do experience like a lot of rejection or people that will just disappear and ghost you. And your initial thought is to be like, it's me. They don't like
It's all
me.
about
We
me.
always make it about us, us. It's about me instead of thinking, what are they thinking? What makes them quiet or hesitant to speak on this topic? So I think that the advice that you just gave pairs perfectly with what we talk about here at Hustle Humbly, and saying it's not about you. So if you have a client, the more different they are from you, the more effort you're going to have to put into that relationship and get out of your own head of taking it personal or making it about you and saying they just don't like me or our personalities aren't meshing well, to think about them.
I have a question in reference to that, Harrison. So, logistically, I would assume listening really helps with this. But if it's someone who's being really quiet, who maybe isn't even yet, what are some ways to make them comfortable with that opening up, or giving them the space where you're ready to listen, but they have to also speak? So, like asking questions, what would be your recommendations there?
I think in a lot of situations, clarity is power. So if you can be more clear about the details of what needs to happen in what order, and kind of get granular about next steps, what's required, and take time to really break that down, that's where a lot of people's fear who are new to a situation comes in, because they're like, well, I don't know exactly what I do next, and when can I retreat, or when can I back out, or like what's my exposure, what's my protection. So I think if I'm in a consult, and the acronym I teach my team when you're filling the air too much and talking too much is wait, ask yourself, why am I talking right now, right? am
Mm.
i am I just filling the air because I'm nervous? Am I like mirroring, matching their energy? If you got a real cagey or fearful person, I think go back to the steps, the order, and the chronology, and then build in pauses to make sure they are clear on what you're saying, and give them more spaces to talk just about the process. Because once there's clarity around the process, then I think it can give them a little bit more confidence to continue to move forward. Because that's, as we know, one of the biggest fear points is like, well, what do I do next? Or because what can I do there? So
Mhm.
focus on process, explain it clearer, and build more intentional pauses to make sure they understand you. And when in doubt, go to some story and narrative. Share your direct experience with what a past client went through in navigating a specific part of it, because that can make it more real than just like preach it at them about hypotheticals about how things could go.
Mhm. When I was newer in 2011, 2012, as a 22-year-old,
Mhm.
the majority of my clientele was first-time home buyers. And so talking about money when we don't really have a lot of money, and talking about the getting pre-approved, that was all very scary. And during my first several years, I went to so many pre-approval meetings with the client. And I've noticed, as I'm entering year like 14, 13 in my business,
Mhm.
I'm not doing that as much because I'm working repeat clients. They've done this before. They're comfortable going to the lender, but even talking to you has made me miss those times when they were nervous. And the ones that never will go get pre-approved. Like, what if you said, do you want me to go with you? I'll go sit with you and we can look at numbers on paper. Those were some of the best meetings. And I also feel like the ones that maybe didn't get approved, they left there feeling so empowered because the lender gave them homework.
Yeah.
They weren't upset about not being approved. They were excited about having a plan in place and knowing, if I do these things, I could be a homeowner. And being there for that meeting as a realtor was so important when they are that unsure, that nervous. And so you're kind of making me want to go back to some of these super young first-time home buyers again.
Dude, get back in it. And look, man, I think we take for granted sometimes some of the regular, or what seem to be, you know, benign parts of our business, like submitting a loan application. But I will build a script into our buyer consult that says, hey, look, once you submit your application and you're looking to get pre-approved, that's step one. After you're under contract, they're going to come back and ask personal, redundant kind of questions that you feel like, why is somebody asking this? It's not personal, because another truthful thing to own if you're helping communities of color is they may have experienced some type of discrimination or disparate
Mhm.
treatment. So one of the first things I have to coach, and we've got an interesting, because I know there's a bunch of statistics about the single women who are dominating the real estate market and purchasing a lot. And we help a lot of young women of color that are single women in the DC area,
Mm.
making great money, buying real estate, investing, doing a bunch. And one of the consistent talking points at our consult out here, in fact, I heard this morning, was like, I don't want people to try to get over on me, not respond to me, ask me for extra stuff, like this feeling or assumption that they're going to get disparate treatment before they even step into it. So I like to speak what we call possibility and protection and intention into them. That like, look, if somebody is ever coming at you in a way that feels like it's wrong, feels like it's uncomfortable, please loop me back in to be a part of it. You're not in this by yourself. Because what's another
Mhm.
kind of benefit of privilege or benefit of having a lot of folks in your life or your family that have done this before? You got a bunch of people you can go to and say, hey, is this normal? Or is this how it should
Yeah, like,
go?
how does this work?
Yeah,
Right,
and for
right.
folks that don't have that, if you're working to build a more diverse book of business, be ready that you might get questions that feel like, of course, this is normal. Like, what? This isn't weird at all. But to people that haven't been
Mhm.
there before, you got to take that with both some patience and some grace to be like, here's what to expect. Here's how it goes. And at any point, if you're not feeling comfortable, please loop me back in and I'll make sure the other folks are giving you the same level of explanation and patience I am, because not every professional, and I'll even queue up my lenders and be like, hey, get ready.
Mhm.
First time buyer, first generation buyer, you're going to need to really be detailed and thoughtful and give them some time because they're concepts they're working through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
But I like the thought of if you were good in your consult or in your lead up and you explain to them, this is really in detail what the process looks like, then they can see the red flags or they can be feeling at ease. Like, well, he said they were going to ask for my same information 3 times. They're not, judging me or not believing me. It's like, this is the process and the
Mhm.
process is redundant. But if they walked into it and didn't know, you have to kind of cut that off at the pass because
Mhm.
I would assume a lot of people just give up, right? Like they say, no, this isn't working.
Yeah,
Mhm.
too much, too
Mhm.
invasive. Not gonna let all these people run my credit. I'm not gonna shop at all. I'm not gonna compare different lenders. I'll just go with the first thing on the internet, and it gave me a
Mhm.
bad rate because it's like no, like let my resources, let quite frankly, let my privilege that I've
Mhm.
earned from my time in this business work to your advantage. Like now that you're with
Mhm.
us, now that you're with me, I've done this a lot. I'm confident. I got you. Right. We're gonna do
Mhm.
this together. And I think making those statements like that can go a lot farther with again first generation more diverse communities that, quite frankly, don't trust like banking, housing, all these main systems. We're not built for them. Quite frankly, not built for us, right?
Yeah.
So like, you got to help
Right.
people, but if it with the right confidence and right steps, you can still navigate them. Like just because it wasn't made for you doesn't mean that you can't still work through it and reap the benefits of it. You just got to have
Mhm.
somebody, like I said before, speak that possibility and also, give the details and knowledge of what to expect next.
That makes perfect sense. And we're big process people. So that makes me happy when you're like, really, it's not hard. It's more like, we're going to really sit down and talk this through. This month in the Hustle Humbly community, we're talking all about working with family.
Not just as a real estate business partner or team, but also representing family in their own transactions.
Want to hear other community members share their stories and advice?
There's still time to join us in the group and participate in the May Live.
Head over to hustlehumblypodcast.com/membership to sign up.
See you there.
All right. I want to talk about sellers for a minute though, because I feel like, we're in the South, so it's a struggle, right? Sellers can say some things that they don't even know what fair housing laws are. They don't know that it's not, I'm not the only one who's following the law. You got to follow it too.
Mhm.
But how do you handle that when, maybe you're walking into a listing appointment and you're being interviewed and you want to get the listing, but you also have to make sure your seller is aware what their legal obligations are and cut that kind of behavior off. Do you have any talking points for me?
When
Yeah,
your
it can
client's
be.
asking questions that we just can't answer,
Yeah.
don't want to answer.
Yeah, yeah. And for context, I just came back actually last weekend from Birmingham, Montgomery, and Grady, Alabama. That's where my family is. I spent every summer down there as a kid growing up. So even though I'm up here in the north, I've got a better understanding of different dynamics in the south and kind of how it goes in your average northerner. So I
Yes.
think when you're approached with an uncomfortable topic or somebody that maybe even has good intentions, like, well, but I love my neighborhood, I love my neighbors, I just want to make sure the next person owns this home. Like they'll say something like that. I'll be like, well, I can understand your intention. I can understand that you may be coming from a good place with that. However, if you're going to have me and my team help sell your home for the maximum net return, we need to expose your home to everybody. Because if we're going to discriminate at all, and I don't even use the word discriminate, if we're going to reduce the potential buyer
Mm,
pool for your property,
mm,
that can
mm,
actually impact your pocket. So I know
mhm,
you really want to think about doing something for the neighborhood moving on, but I think you probably want to net more money and move on to your next chapter of life with the best return possible. Is that right? So if you move it
mhm,
away from their kind of emotional and personal intention and put it back to the money, that's another argument that I've found can be helpful sometimes. And if they're not willing to adhere to that, and they say, I'm willing to die on this hill and actually take less money because of my assumptions,
mm-mm.
bigotry, whatever else because of it, and that's probably a listing you don't need, personally. Like,
Yeah.
but it's not
And I
easy.
think it's great to give people permission to say, if it's someone that's just not letting that go, you may have to be the one to let it go. You don't want all the business. Even if you're new and this is like the only person that's willing to work with you right now,
Yeah,
this is not how you want to start off your career.
yeah,
No, 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 no. And in our local listing agreement, the section closest to the bottom where you sign is about fair housing law, right? Like it walks it through. And I don't read every word of every listing agreement to my sellers, but I sure read that one because I'm like, you're subject to this law whether you knew what it was before or not. You thought about it. I feel like they need to be kind of just gently reminded
Mhm.
this is how we're going to behave during this transaction.
and
Um,
look, I've done trainings. I've been everywhere, Iowa, Midwest, Florida. Like I've been to places that are, quite frankly, are not diverse, and I've done
Mhm.
DEI trainings. Wisconsin was one of the most interesting ones, and I wanted to empower people there that, like, look, there is a difference between, like I said, your intention and what you might mean or hope or want based on what you know, and then how that can be perceived or received by other people in the market. When you hire a realtor that has a code of ethics, that is to uphold fair housing law, that is both good for you to keep you out of you know, real estate jail, finding actual jail, and me in our market. But it is also the right economic and financial decision. Because I'm like, look, even if you disagree, we're in a time where politically people will disagree with the word diversity or DEI. If you disagree with that, I don't think you can disagree with financial returns, exposure, and the best actual net from a business standpoint. I'm like, I hope that you agree from a personal and ethical and spiritual, whatever place you come from. But if you disagree on that side, let me expose your home to the most people to help you get the best return first, and let's stay there and focus on that. Right? I can't change
Mhm.
you, can't change who you are. I've got my rules. Our market has its rules for a reason, and these rules, when you adhere to them, actually can equal positive business outcomes.
Sure.
Yeah, I like the focus to the business outcome. If you're like, I can't change who you are, maybe I at least will let you see the logic. Okay, let's talk about this NAR settlement situation.
Not for like a very long time, but just a little bit, okay?
Alyssa gets real beat down. It's a lot. We cover the news here on the show more than we thought we were going to have to when we started
Right?
it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, how are these terms as proposed
Mhm.
going to affect fair housing, housing inclusion? Like I just want to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So I think the biggest part of this for realtors to understand is that the driving force behind the Burnett Sitzer lawsuit, which equaled the current biggest settlement we're talking about, and the Department of Justice, who has a whole separate kind of initiative and drive, those are focused around a faulty premise. Like everything that they are based on is faulty. And what is faulty about it is that a reduction in commission will directly correlate to a reduction in prices consumers pay. They have connected and conflated commission to price increase and price increase to harm. As we know from being in the market, there's a concept called supply and demand that actually has a bigger impact on prices. Interest rates, like there's all these other factors that actually impact prices in the market. The two main parties driving change in our industry and world don't care about that fact and truth. So as much as we are logical and experienced and know that those things are disconnected, and I get mad, quite frankly, that somebody made
Me
that
too.
connection and like made laws around it. Now it is changing, and that it won't actually have a measurable impact on price changes. Like it won't have a measurable impact on prices. I think that will have to be borne out and shown with data before they reconsider that premise at all. So be
Mhm.
mad, go ahead and punch the air, right? Like
Yeah.
squeeze your anger ball. And then after you realize that that is one truth, the next truth we have to move to is how can we as local and state associations get ready for the higher volume of violations, complaints, and things that will happen when a transparent marketplace moves to a place that is not transparent. I think those are, at first I took it, I was mad, then I'm like, okay, what do we actually do? How do we in my sales business and how do I in my leadership positions just prepare ourselves for the changes that are happening? It's like stages of grief, right? Like I take it at first, I'm like hurt, I'm upset, and then I move on and I get a plan and a process to like keep going. And I know you feel it, Alyssa, right? Like I'm sure you're
Mhm.
hearing it, you're feeling
Mhm.
it. So,
Uh-huh.
that's a truth to establish. How does it impact fair housing? I think that when we talk about privilege, we talk about access to information, we talk about the people who are already best positioned to thrive in real estate markets. It's people with all that, folks with money, with privilege, with knowledge, with relationships. When you create a world where that group that has all the information is given infrastructure to keep all of their information even closer in there will be even more folks left behind who are already the most marginalized, least resourced folks on the edge of our housing market anyway. Will it mean a dramatic, complete fallout of people towards the lower, middle, and bottom of our market? No. But will it mean we have to be more thoughtful and creative and intentional about how we help them still stay in the market and find ways to build structures and to compensate their representative because they should have one? Yes. And if I can be, blunt about, I think the most direct change that I think the removing compensation from MLS will have is it's going to force buyer agents to negotiate at multiple different touch points with their buyer client where they didn't have to before. And because
Mhm.
a lot of people don't have any skills, can't communicate, and aren't good at talking about numbers or money, that group of folks who are bad at it will probably make less money or not be able to be in the market at all. Those who are higher skilled, who are proactive about conversations, clear about process, clear about options, and seeking options and solutions will still be in the market. We're just going to have a little bit more work to do for the rest of this year and next year as we adjust to a new normal. So, like, I know I was an athlete back in the day. You can't tell from chest below now. I think of it like I used to look straight ahead at my future and say like, okay, here's a path. Maybe I got a couple cones to go around left and right. It's not going to be that bad. I'm looking at the future now, and it's kind of like a hill. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to go around some hills. I gotta just. But on the other side of that hill, it's going to be a little easier. But it is not going
Mhm.
to be clear. It's not going to be easy. I'd argue for the next 6 months to a year, and just figuring out what the new normal is. But I'm not
Mhm.
freaked out. I was mad for a little bit, and now I'm like, I've got some systems, I've got some ideas, and my focus is training my team on the correct conversation flows, and even working with lenders. And if I can give a quick tip on what I think people should do, the same
Mhm.
way we make seller net sheets for our sellers to show them what
Mhm.
their net proceeds, total cash out of pocket, and everything will be. I'm working with our lenders on the buy side for loan programs that allow it to create buyer cost estimates that are building
Mhm.
in different compensation structures into the cost estimate so that my buyer has crystal clarity. If this potential property is not offering any compensation, here are our options that work within your budget and your means and your loan program. And this is what we agreed upon in our agreement. This is what this house is going to cost you, monthly payment, cash out of pocket. In this
Mhm.
world, post if a seller is deciding not to compensate me, then that may have a slightly detrimental impact on your cash out of pocket for this house. But for the majority of the other houses, it's a pretty good chance, especially in the DC metro area, sellers will still choose to compensate us something and it won't impact you. But on the off case that it does, I want to make sure you've
Mhm.
seen it, you understand it, and you have an option on if you still want to pursue that house or not. And I'm even testing a script out that if that's a house that you love, they're not offering compensation at all to me, then I'm never going to stand in the way of you buying that house. And if you want to go try to purchase that unrepresented, I can give you some kind of sideline advice, but I'm not going to stand in between you and the house of your dreams. Right?
Hmm.
You say that to
I
folks.
love the idea of a buyer net sheet to where they can plug in their own numbers and really, because that's what we're going to have to do is
Yeah,
per house,
yeah,
check the numbers. Is this house even an option? I told Katie, it's kind of like when I had a buyer that was going RD, every house I had to plug into the RD website to
mhm,
see what it spit out because our lines here for RD are kind of crazy. You never really know where the line is. And it's like sometimes it just wasn't in the area that, and I was like, I'm sorry, this house isn't RD and your budget only allows for RD. So
and is
unless
that
you can go
rural development?
FHA.
What is
Mhm.
RD? I'm sorry, I don't know what RD is.
Oh, I'm sorry, rural development. It's
Okay.
in our market, we have the rural development loan, the USDA
Oh,
loan.
got you. Yeah,
It's
yeah. Okay.
100. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We call it rural development RD.
Mhm.
So our map here is just crazy.
Yeah,
Like areas that you wouldn't think qualify do, and some that don't. It doesn't always make sense. So you have to check every address when you're working with an RD buyer, and if they have their own buyer net sheet, it's
mhm.
going to be a similar situation. We're going to have to check each house and see, do you feel comfortable with this house based on the monthly note and the cash needed to close?
That's it. It's clarity, right? It's clarity.
Mm.
Clarity comes.
Clarity.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, I have a question, and this literally came to me as you described that scenario. Because
Mhm,
I'm trying to think about, and I think we all are, what are the next thing? Like, how will the system actually flow, right?
mhm,
So, if you have the buyer and you've done their buyer cost analysis sheet, and so they know, but then the house comes up, it's the one, and
mhm.
it's not offering a buyer side compensation, and you say to them, hey, I'm not going to hold you to this. If that's the house you need to have, I'm going to, and you feel okay about going to be unrepresented, go on, be free, buy your right house. Like there's not a lot of houses out there. You got to do what you got to do, right? Is there maybe a service right there where it's like, hey, but here's my 10-part guide to buying a house. It's $500. I'm going to give it to you and you're going to go. Like I can't be there the rest of the way, but I don't want you to go out into the night like without a flashlight. Like let's at least give you something. I feel like there is maybe some space there where agents can, because I'm worried about the buyers. Like these are the people who are punished right now. It's the first time buyers or buyers who haven't done this in a long time, or maybe no, like you said, no one they know has ever done it. Well, they need representation, or they won't get to the end goal, which is buying the house, right? Or they'll do it for
And
too much, or with
mhm.
bad, like without getting repairs, or whatever. All the options or possible ways it can go wrong. But I do feel like there is some knowledge you could impart on them. That's like, hey, take this. Like I can give
Mhm.
you this.
Mhm.
1000%. And what you described is different programming and program offers that we as business owners, once you check with your broker, are allowed to create. So I envision a world where, and I don't know if Louisiana was a buyer agency state before this. We've had buyer
Mhm.
agency like that. That's been a part of my practice since 2008. So like that's not new to me, right? I require, in fact, in the classes I teach on buyer agency, before we physically go out and look at stuff, you have to execute the agreement. It has been my practice 15 years, right? Like that's what I've done. So that's not a new thing to me. What I'm imagining will change in the future is if we need to amend or end, like changing cancellation language or amendment language to that agreement that says, if you need some type of limited service model from me, here is what that costs. Here's the flat fee.
Mhm.
Here's the reduced percentage. Here is XYZ. Because I can imagine if you still find a way to serve and help and be a part of the transaction, even in a limited capacity that everybody agrees to and it's all in writing, that client is still going to be so happy. And for a business like I've got, and I know y'all got that's referral based, they're going to be grateful that you stayed in and didn't bail on them, right? Like I'm building in the
Mhm.
gratitude by saying, I'm not going to withhold you from the home you want. But then the next step is, if you still need me, here are other limited service options that my broker
Mhm.
allows, that my team leader agrees to, and how I can help you. Now, we know limited service rarely becomes actually limited service down the line, but I think as long as there's clarity around it and there are options, I think we'll be okay. And the problem I've got is some of the more seasoned professionals that are not open to disruptive
Mhm.
and different models, right? Like there was a and I won't say a standard compensation, but a relatively standard structure that we were always used to, right? Hadn't been changed, is what it is. Show you the house, I'm gonna get paid something, cool. Now we have to be much more direct, intentional, and
Mhm.
specific with each interaction. It's extra steps added to the buyer process, period.
Mhm.
And once we get used to that being the standard, then what we did before won't feel, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just about this time of transition and creating more options and a little bit more working conversation that people are going to be uncomfortable with. But the sooner you get flexible, you get stretch, man. You gotta stretch out. You gotta be flexible. Because in this new world,
Mhm.
like that's what's going to help people stay around and survive and thrive. And quite frankly, the flexibility will be needed to service different clients in different places.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I've read so many articles about sort of the aftermath of this lawsuit, increasing fair housing issues, and then not only affecting our clients, but with what sellers are maybe offering not made public anymore. A listing agent telling Katie, oh, yeah, we're offering this percent. But then when Harrison comes along and he's a minority agent, we say, oh, our seller's not offering any compensation. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to like figure that out.
And
Like,
my one,
because there's less transparency.
and I was going to say my one quick response to that is everywhere in a listing agreement, we should be consistent and binding unless you have a variable commission option. It should be
Right.
the same number that is marketed. The big change
Mhm.
post July will be that that number cannot be marketed on a public MLS portal. It can be on my private site. It can be on my Instagram. It can be on my flyers. It can be on my disclosure, whatever. So I should, and this adds a step to buyer agents' jobs, like something I train my agents to do. And what I always did in the past was include a PDF of the listing in the actual offer that we sent, because that showed the offer
Yeah.
of compensation at the time of submission. I can imagine a world where we
Mhm.
will need an extra document, an extra something
Mhm.
that is signed in writing by brokers, sellers, buyers, everybody that says for this deal, this compensation is X. It's an extra step, but again, clarity is power, right? The more redundant I can be, and if it's all in
Mhm.
writing by everybody and everybody agrees, there's no issue. The biggest change with the lawsuit, though, is how and where that is marketed and how it's talked about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny. Whenever I was early in the business, my broker required us to do that, print up the MLS listing where it showed the compensation, and it was required because we had paper folders then, right? I mean, that was 2006, 7.
Yeah.
So you had to have in the folder because there were some sketch agents who would just go in and change it in the MLS after it was under contract, and you'd have to pull up the paper and be like, no, ma'am, it's right here. And so now that's what bothers me because I know I'm going to do the right thing. And I know Alyssa's going to do the right thing. And you're probably going to do the right thing. But there are enough agents that do not do the right thing. And now we are going to have to police each other in some way in
Mhm.
order to hold them accountable. Like, hey, this is what you said was the commission. You have to actually pay that.
And
Yeah.
I'm hoping, like what Harrison said, that part of policing, maybe it's like 6 to 12 months, maybe 18 months. And then I'm hoping the beauty of this mess is that the strong stay, and the ones that were looking for loopholes, looking for ways out, like they're not going to make it. If you're performing business in an unprofessional manner, lawsuits are coming your way. Everybody's preparing for more lawsuits. Like you're not going to make it. And so maybe this time next year or in 2 years, we're going to have a much better scrubbed pool of real estate professionals for the public to choose from.
Let's hope. Let's just hope.
And look, markets
Okay.
do what they do naturally anyway, right? We had a peak right before all this stuff went down. We were at we were at the highest agent count ever in history at over 1.6 million. Okay. So something was going to happen. The first thing that happens with rates going up and the market kind of, taking the tank in some places, and it not being as hot as it was in 20 and 21. This is another thing that will happen to cause the natural cycle of up and down. So we're about to be in a down cycle of agents leaving. But for us that are going to be around, that's more market share for us doing the right thing to take care of and more space to help and just do the right thing to support folks in the market navigating.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a perfect lead into our next question, which is in terms of us being the real estate professionals, like what can we do to be the best advocates for fair housing?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles if you're looking at supporting marginalized communities is money, financing, and resources. So the simplest thing you
Mhm.
can do is be working with not just your lenders, but your local economic development authority. Almost every community's got some type of grant or other program out there. A marketing strategy that we're deploying, like right now this spring, is creating a list of both public and private programs. So all of our lenders that are hitting me up for lunch, I'm like, all right, I don't want to know just about your FHA, your VA, your USDA. Tell me about your grant money. Tell me about your census
Mhm.
tract money. Tell me about all the different things you've got. And yes, preferred lender, I'm putting this on a chart, comparing it to other lenders' programs. You can have that chart so you can maybe step your game up, but I want to create this in one place to share a centralized resource of where all the money,
Mhm.
like that car commercial. I think it was in Louisiana. It's like where the money resides, where the money resides, where the money. I'm gonna show you where all the money resides,
There you go.
right? But I think that's a
So
tangible
funny.
thing that can help you with your business and also directly help a lot of our marginalized communities. And like I said earlier, just slowing down, being thoughtful, being intentional, and realizing that just because you haven't
Mhm.
seen or experienced or felt disparate treatment or things in the market,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that the people you're helping haven't. So you need to approach them with some grace, some patience, and an extra level of kind of care and concern to make sure that they feel protected and heard, and you build trust in that way with them.
I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, your time is very valuable. So, last thing, do you have any favorite resources, other speakers, places where agents who want to learn more about fair housing can go and find good resources?
Yeah. Well, the National Fair Housing Alliance, NFHA, run by Lori Brenner. She speaks at a lot of conferences around the country. They've got a lot of good information. My good friend Paula Montefer, I think she's at P Montefer on Instagram, is a national speaker and good friend of mine that is just really good at framing, telling the story. Excuse me. And then
Mhm.
come to our conferences, man. Like as you mentioned, my role for 2024 is NAR's meetings and conference co-chair. We've got a big conference in DC in May, but our biggest one is in November in Boston. That's our annual conference.
Anything
Perfect.
else?
Well, I think this episode went even better than I would have hoped because at the end of the day, it's about what you said, what we need to do for the minority is what we need to do for all. Like how we treat our clients needs to be consistent across the board. We need to be listening to all of them, taking our time, understanding where they're coming from, making it about them and not making it about us. And if you do that, it's pretty hard to violate any fair housing laws if you're just operating from a professional, consistent standpoint.
And there are also some classes that I didn't mention earlier that people should consider. There's the At Home with Diversity designation, the Bias Override, which is an NAR
Mm.
approved class, the Fair Haven simulation, which if you haven't done it, when I was president of my local, I created a challenge and asked my members to take all three of those classes within the calendar year. And then I gave them special perks at our annual award ceremony and our other events that celebrated not just top producers, but folks that chose to lean into all things DEI and serving other communities and learning to build their toolbox. So I think those are three great tools. And I can email you some of that stuff too to share. It's helpful.
Oh, yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely. We'll put it in the show notes if you want to email it to us and tell everyone. Did you bring a toast?
Oh,
Wait, okay, Alissa, tell them what a toast
Okay,
is.
so we end each episode with a toast where you can say, usually we have agents send us an email and say, I want to toast to my mentor so and so.
mm,
But when we have a guest, we like to let you shout out, give a toast to someone that has made an impact in your business that you want to give a shout out to on the show.
Yeah.
As we end our episode.
I love it. Okay. Well, I'll give a shout out right now to the Birdseed Foundation. It's actually an organization that I sit on the board here in DC. And it's a public benefits corporation that's funded by this other cool, like, home warranty product that one of my friends here runs. They give need blind grants to Black, Brown, and immigrant people in the DC metro area to buy their first homes. But by serving on that board, I've been able to meet, and I just had another listing appointment this morning, about 4 or 5 other people that want to engage and use our services as directly connected to my service on that board, fundraising for it and talking about it. So shout out to the Birdseed Foundation and Birdwatch for inviting me to be on the board, the great work they do, and the business opportunities that have organically come out of that board service.
That's perfect.
I love that. That is perfect. Where can everyone find you if they'd like to get in touch with you, follow you, see what you're up to, listen to the podcast? Tell us where they can find you.
I'm on Instagram at HLBeach. Our team is on Instagram at Coalition Properties. And then our website is coalitionpg.com. But Instagram is the best way to get me through anything. We've also got a lot of great content on YouTube, including our podcast at All Blends Perfectly. We've got some good episodes talking about like code switching, about a lot of different lived experiences that we've had in the real estate industry that could be entertaining and fun. But thank you, and happy to help and connect and make my world bigger by meeting it all.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you so much. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Hustle Humbly podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to ratethispodcast.com/hustlehumbly and leave us a review, or like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications.
If you have an episode topic or someone you'd like to toast on the show, please email us at team@hustlehumblypodcast.com.
Find us on social media at Hustle Humbly Podcast. Don't forget to find all the free resources at hustlehumblypodcast.com/resources.
See you next week.